Are you ready to hear a truth that even battle-hardened veterans dare not whisper? Forget everything Hollywood has taught you. Today, we peel back the top-secret layers of a story that was never meant to exist. Into a smothering heat of the jungle, where every shadow hides danger, they dropped one man. No heavy machine guns, no backup, no fanfare. Just a shadow, a knife, and an unyielding presence. His name was Corporal Logan, an Australian from the Special Air Service Regiment, officially attached to the American Cobra team for reconnaissance. But his appearance was anything but official. Faded uniform, worn rifle, a soft, boonie hat pulled low, a massive Fairbairn Sykes fighting knife hung from his chest like a relic from another era. The Americans laughed. They called him a tourist, a misplaced wanderer. Forward Operating Base 2, known as Quantum, was less a military facility and more a boiling pot of testosterone, rock music, and burnt aviation fuel. The year was 1968, and chaos reigned. Soldiers moved with pride, wielding machine guns as if they were extensions of themselves, convinced that volume of fire equaled control. Into this world walked Logan, silent, observant, a predator amidst prey. Captain Marcus Stone, leader of Cobra team, stared at the transfer papers. Barely a sheet of paper, no evaluations, no prior mission history, just a dry stamp and a signature. Something in Logan's posture chilled Stone. He moved with a precision, a calm economy of motion that spoke of someone who had mastered more than just warfare. The first introduction was tense. Cobra team, used to humor and rough camaraderie, saw Logan's silence as arrogance. He refused beer, ignored debriefs, and sat sharpening his knife. The dull scraping of steel on stone was his only reply to taunts. To the Americans, this was unsettling. To Logan, it was routine. He did not come to blend in. He came to dominate in silence. The philosophy clash was immediate. American doctrine: overwhelm with firepower, call airstrikes, burn the jungle. Logan: silence, stealth, precision. Stone noticed the Australian checking tripwires along the perimeter, eyes closed, fingertips feeling tension. Logan could sit motionless for hours, blending with foliage, breathing so shallow it seemed he had learned to move like the dead. "Not here to learn from us," Stone muttered to his deputy. "We're too loud to survive." The words hung in the air, ignored by most. But Logan's methods would soon prove that they were far from safe, and the jungle itself could become both ally and weapon in his hands. The night was thick with humidity. The moon barely pierced the canopy, painting the jungle floor in streaks of silver and black. Corporal Logan moved like a shadow stitched into the trees, every step deliberate, silent. Cobra team had been assigned a routine reconnaissance patrol, a mission they considered minor. But Logan treated it as a chessboard. Every branch, every rustle of leaves, every distant splash in the river was a potential threat or opportunity. "Stay close," Stone whispered, flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. The Americans trailed behind Logan, clumsy in their movements, boots crushing leaves and twigs. Logan's own footsteps left almost no trace. He signaled with a barely perceptible tilt of his head, guiding the team past hidden tripwires and natural pitfalls, unseen by the enemy that awaited deeper in the forest. The target was a Viet Cong supply cache, hidden beneath a tangle of vines and camouflaged by mud. The Americans approached with brash confidence, scanning the perimeter with rifles raised. Logan paused, crouched, and extended a single finger, a silent command to halt. Stone peered over his shoulder. "There," Logan whispered, barely audible. Between two twisted roots, a trap. A bamboo spike, rigged to a crude explosive. The Americans froze, heartbeats loud in the oppressive silence. Logan moved forward, disarming the trap with tools no bigger than his palm, the motion so fluid it seemed rehearsed in some secret art. Inside the cache, crates of ammunition and rice were stacked meticulously. Cobra team moved in, rifling through the supplies, while Logan's eyes scanned every shadow, every overhanging branch, every hint of danger. A sudden snap, barely noticeable, revealed an enemy patrol advancing from the riverbank. The Americans panicked, weapons raised, ready to engage in a firefight. Logan, calm as ever, raised a hand. With a series of soft clicks, he signaled the team to drop to the ground. Then, moving like water around rocks, Logan slipped behind the patrol, incapacitating the first sentry with a precise strike. Within moments, two more fell silently. The rest scattered, unaware of the predator among them. When it was over, Stone could hardly believe it. No shots fired, no alarms, no casualties on their side. The cache had been secured, and the patrol neutralized, all without a single firefight. He finally understood what the Australian had brought. Not just skill, but a philosophy that turned the jungle itself into a weapon. Later, around the campfire, the team tried to celebrate, but Logan sat apart, sharpening his knife once again. "You're a ghost," one of the younger soldiers whispered. Logan did not answer. Silence was his language. And in that silence, the jungle listened. The morning mist hung low over the long high hills. The jungle, still damp from last night's rain, clung to the men's uniforms, weighing them down. Logan led Cobra team along a narrow ridge, every step calculated. Intelligence had reported a Viet Cong squad moving through the area, transporting weapons and medical supplies. "Keep eyes sharp," Logan murmured, scanning the undergrowth. Stone and the Americans followed, rifles ready, though visibly uneasy. The terrain was unforgiving. Limestone cliffs rose abruptly on either side, forming natural choke points. The enemy could appear from anywhere. Suddenly, a rustle to their left. Logan dropped to a knee, motioning silently. Through the leaves, two enemy soldiers emerged, unaware of the Australians lying in wait. Logan signaled a two-pronged approach. One team to block the rear, one to move around and intercept. The encounter was brutal, yet controlled. Logan struck first, a silent takedown with his combat knife. Stone struggled to keep up, firing his rifle but aiming cautiously to avoid alerting the entire squad. The ambush escalated as more Viet Cong soldiers appeared, but Logan's planning allowed the Australians to control the battlefield. The jungle became both shield and weapon. Fallen branches, uneven terrain, and sudden shadows worked to their advantage. By the time the firefight started in earnest, Logan had already predicted enemy movements, cutting them off and forcing them into confined spaces where their numbers counted for little. Grenades were used sparingly, precise, and with perfect timing. Within 20 minutes, the squad was in retreat, leaving supplies and documents behind. Logan checked each crate of supplies carefully, noting the serial numbers on weapons and examining maps that revealed enemy routes. The Americans crowded around, trying to make sense of the documents. This "This is big," one muttered. Logan's eyes remained distant, scanning the tree line. He was already thinking about the next move, the next threat lurking just beyond sight. As dusk fell, the team moved to a new extraction point. The jungle seemed to close in tighter, the air thick with mosquitoes and the smell of damp earth. Logan's discipline never wavered. "Rest is temporary," he said softly. "We move at first light." Stone noticed how the Australian's movements were almost imperceptible, silent, efficient, almost inhuman. That night, the fire was small, controlled. Every sound was listened to, every shadow observed. The Americans tried to relax, but the jungle seemed alive, watching, listening. Logan sat apart, knife in hand, sharpening and resharpening as if each stroke aligned his mind with the forest. It was not paranoia. It was survival. And the jungle was unforgiving to the careless. The jungle never slept, and neither could Logan's team. By dawn, a heavy mist clung to the undergrowth, muffling their movements but also concealing dangers that seemed to lurk in every shadow. The towering trees stretched like ancient sentinels, their thick canopies filtering the weak light, casting the forest floor in a perpetual twilight. The scent of wet earth and decaying leaves filled the air, mixed with the faint tang of gun oil from their rifles. Intelligence had suggested the Viet Cong were regrouping nearby, possibly preparing a counterattack, and Logan knew that patience was as lethal a weapon as any rifle. The Australians led the Americans through narrow trails that twisted like veins through the hills, their movements deliberate and silent. Every step was calculated. Broken branches were carefully examined, footprints analyzed, and the subtle scent of smoke noted as a possible signal. Stone struggled to keep pace, his lungs burning with exertion and adrenaline. Logan, aware of the younger man's fatigue, gave minimal guidance, knowing that every spoken word increased the risk of detection. Hours passed in almost complete silence, the only sounds being the occasional rustle of leaves, the distant calls of jungle birds, and the squelch of mud under booted feet. Logan's eyes, sharp and constantly scanning, caught every movement, every unnatural shadow. The jungle was alive, and it had its own rules, rules that could kill the unwary. Every vine could be a snare, every shadow a threat. Suddenly, the silence shattered. A series of rifle shots ripped through the dense foliage, the sharp cracks echoing unnaturally through the hills. Logan dove into a shallow ditch, dragging Stone with him. Bullets thudded into the trees and the soft ground, dislodging leaves and dirt, a harsh reminder that hunters could instantly become the hunted. The Americans reacted with instinctive fire, but Logan could see their positions were exposed. He motioned for them to hold and move cautiously, emphasizing the need to avoid unnecessary risks. "Ambush," Logan hissed, his voice low but sharp. His eyes scanned the jungle, noting the subtle movements of foliage that suggested hidden positions. Shadows shifted unnaturally. The Viet Cong had learned to anticipate Australian tactics. Logan's heart, calm but focused, reminded him that this was not a battle of firepower alone. They had set traps, camouflaged pits, and tripwires. Every step carried the risk of death. The Australians responded instantly, moving like phantoms through the undergrowth. Their movements were fluid, silent, and deadly. Within moments, 2 enemy fighters fell before they could even react. Logan's team adapted, weaving through the ambush, using the terrain to their advantage. Stone, terrified yet fascinated, marveled at the precision and coordination of their allies. Every movement was rehearsed, every action measured against the unforgiving laws of the jungle. Time became a blur of gunfire, shouted commands, and sudden, violent encounters. Sweat and blood mixed with mud, staining uniforms and weapons. Logan pushed forward relentlessly, knowing that the longer the skirmish lasted, the greater the cost. The Americans, relying on sheer firepower, often risked exposure, while the Australians used patience, camouflage, and the jungle itself as weapons. Logan admired their methods, but knew that survival demanded constant vigilance. A single misstep could be fatal. As the day wore on, they discovered evidence that the Viet Cong were actively adapting. Fresh footprints, newly set traps, and improvised fortifications showed that the enemy was learning from every encounter. Logan examined each clue carefully, plotting routes that minimized exposure while keeping pressure on the enemy. The Australians' methods, patient, methodical, almost surgical, contrasted sharply with the Americans' more direct approach, yet both were necessary for the mission's success. Stone, despite exhaustion, continued to shadow Logan's every move, silently noting his calm demeanor and decisive actions. Logan occasionally glanced at him, offering brief, silent lessons: how to read the terrain, how to anticipate enemy movement, how to use silence as a shield. The young soldier absorbed every nuance, understanding that survival was as much mental as it was physical. By mid-afternoon, the ambush was broken, but the toll was evident. Supplies had been lost in the chaos, and 2 American soldiers were wounded, their injuries treated hastily in the relative cover of the jungle. Logan's gaze swept the tree line, noting that the enemy had melted back into the shadows, regrouping for the next strike. The jungle itself seemed to conspire against them, each rustle of leaves a warning, each snap of a twig a reminder that danger was never far. The team pushed further into the hills, setting up a temporary camp in a dense thicket that offered concealment but little comfort. Fires were kept small, barely enough to cook their meager rations, and movements were minimal. Logan reviewed maps and sketches, plotting their next move with meticulous attention. He understood that the Viet Cong were not just an enemy. They were a force that learned and adapted, requiring constant innovation to stay ahead. Night fell, and with it, the jungle transformed. Insects swarmed, nocturnal predators prowled, and the sounds of distant combat echoed faintly. Some soldiers found the eerie sounds calming, while others, like Stone, felt a creeping dread. Logan, awake and alert, listened intently. Every snapping twig, every whisper of wind, every faint echo of distant voices carried a potential warning. He knew that the next test, the next ambush, could come before dawn. Stone finally broke the silence. "How do you stay so calm?" he whispered, voice tinged with fatigue and fear. Logan gave a small, grim smile, the lines of his face worn but resolute. "Calm is a weapon," he said quietly. "Fear is the enemy that kills faster than bullets. Learn to control it, or it will control you." Stone nodded, feeling the weight of the jungle pressing down upon them, understanding in a visceral way that Logan's calm was born from experience and necessity, not absence of fear. As the team rested, Logan's mind raced through possibilities: patrol routes, enemy positions, supply lines, escape paths. The jungle was unforgiving, and hesitation could mean death. He knew that every decision carried weight, that every movement was scrutinized by eyes unseen. The Australians, his mentors in the field, moved with confidence and precision, teaching by example the delicate balance between aggression and patience, between initiative and restraint. By the end of the night, the camp had transformed into a fortress of silence. Watches were set, positions reinforced, and every soldier understood the stakes. Logan stayed awake, leaning against a tree, scanning the dense shadows, listening for the slightest indication of movement. The jungle was a living entity, and he was determined to understand its language before the dawn brought the next wave of danger. The night stretched endlessly, yet Logan remained vigilant. Every hour was a lesson in observation, every moment a test of endurance. Stone, now asleep, but still trembling occasionally, embodied the price of inexperience. Logan knew that the young soldier would emerge stronger, but only if he survived the crucible of the long high hills. Dawn crept slowly over the long high hills, painting the jagged limestone ridges in pale gold and shadow. The jungle, alive with the sounds of morning, seemed almost serene, deceptively so. Logan's team moved quietly through the dense foliage, every sense attuned to the dangers that had plagued them for days. The air was thick with humidity, and sweat soaked their uniforms before any exertion had begun. The Australians led, their steps measured, their eyes sharp. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves was examined, every potential threat anticipated. "This is it," Logan whispered to Stone, who followed a few paces behind, clutching his rifle as though it were a lifeline. "The enemy knows we're close. Stay sharp, and trust what you've learned." Stone nodded, heart pounding, as the words sank in. He had seen the consequences of hesitation, of inattention, and he knew that today would be the ultimate test. Their target was a fortified Viet Cong stronghold, concealed deep in a valley surrounded by sheer cliffs. Intelligence suggested it was a command post, a hub for operations against nearby Allied positions. Taking it out could shift the balance in the region, but failure meant death, silent, swift, and merciless. Logan studied the map, memorizing the contour lines, noting likely approaches and possible escape routes. As they descended into the valley, the jungle seemed to close around them, vines tangling, branches reaching like claws. Birds fled at their approach, startled by the unnatural quiet of disciplined movement. The Australians scouted ahead, identifying traps, tripwires, and hidden pits. Logan followed, his mind calculating every step, every action, aware that the outcome rested on precision, patience, and the courage of those around him. Suddenly a faint noise, a shuffle almost imperceptible, halted the team. Logan froze, signaling for silence. His eyes swept the undergrowth. A Viet Cong sentry had wandered off his post, oblivious to the hunters moving in shadows above. Logan gestured, and two Australians moved like phantoms, neutralizing the guard before he could sound an alarm. Of careful approach led them to the edge of careful approach, led them to the edge of the stronghold. Camouflaged bunkers dotted the valley floor, and armed guards moved in disciplined patterns. Logan signaled the team to take positions on a ridge overlooking the camp. Binoculars scanned the perimeter, noting sentries, watchtowers, and entry points. The Australians whispered observations, their knowledge of jungle tactics allowing them to read every subtle movement. Logan's mind raced. A frontal assault would be suicide. Patience and deception were their allies. He coordinated with the Australians, establishing simultaneous points of attack and withdrawal. The Americans, still learning, followed orders precisely, aware that deviation could cost lives. Stone's hands shook slightly, but he gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus. Every nerve was taut, every instinct screaming at him to react before thinking. But Logan reminded him silently. Observation first, action second. As the sun climbed higher, the attack began. Small charges were placed at structural weak points, carefully timed to create confusion without alerting reinforcements. Logan led a flanking maneuver, weaving through thick underbrush, staying just out of sight. Gunfire erupted sporadically, precise and controlled, not a chaotic barrage. Each shot was deliberate, each movement calculated. The Australians moved like shadows, appearing and disappearing, their presence felt only by those who met their aim. Stone found himself beside Logan as they advanced toward the central bunker. Fear clawed at him, but Logan's calm presence was grounding. "Remember," Logan whispered, "this is about patience and timing. Strike only when the moment is right." They waited, hidden in the undergrowth, as the defenders regrouped, unaware that the hunters were circling. The signal came, a subtle hand movement from one of the Australians, and chaos erupted within the Viet Cong lines. Charges detonated, sending plumes of smoke into the sky. The defenders scrambled, disoriented, as Logan's team surged forward. The Americans provided suppressing fire, while the Australians closed in with deadly precision. Stone's rifle cracked, hitting targets that Logan had called out in the heat of the moment. Adrenaline and fear combined, sharpening his instincts. Inside the central bunker, Logan encountered resistance that tested every lesson he had absorbed in the jungle. Shadows moved, rifles fired, grenades exploded. Each encounter was a life-and-death decision. Hesitation meant death. He moved with fluidity, dispatching enemies while ensuring his team remained coordinated. Stone followed, now more confident, his movements sharper, more assured. The lessons of the past days crystallized in the fire of combat. By mid-morning, the stronghold was subdued. Survivors were captured. Others had fled into the dense jungle. Logan surveyed the scene, noting the efficiency of their strike. Minimal casualties, maximum disruption. The Australians had taught the Americans a harsh truth. Firepower alone could not win in the jungle. Strategy, patience, and understanding the terrain were as important as bullets. The team regrouped, tending to the wounded and securing intelligence. Documents, maps, and radios were collected, revealing the extent of the Viet Cong operations in the area. Logan felt a quiet satisfaction, not in the violence, but in the precision, in the culmination of days of learning, watching, surviving. Stone, exhausted and exhilarated, looked at Logan with newfound respect. "I understand now," he said quietly. "I finally understand what you meant about patience." Logan nodded, acknowledging the truth in the young soldier's words. As they prepared to exfiltrate the valley, the jungle seemed to breathe around them, indifferent to the events that had unfolded. Birds called, insects buzzed, and the wind shifted through the leaves. The long high hills had tested them, shaped them, and revealed the harsh realities of war. Each soldier carried the weight of experience, the scars of close encounters, and the knowledge that survival was never guaranteed. The return journey was tense but uneventful. The Americans, now more disciplined and attuned to their environment, moved with purpose and caution. Logan watched over them, noting their growth, understanding that the lessons of the jungle extended far beyond combat. Discipline, observation, and mental resilience were as critical as courage and skill. By late afternoon, the ridge they had started from loomed ahead. The team paused, taking in the view of the jungle stretched below them. The valley had been conquered, the mission complete, but the experience had left an indelible mark. Logan felt a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and quiet pride. Stone, beside him, was silent, absorbing the enormity of what they had endured and achieved. As they descended the ridge, Logan reflected on the journey. The jungle had been a teacher, harsh and unforgiving, but effective. Every obstacle, ambush, and challenge had honed their instincts, tested their courage, and solidified the bonds between men. The Australians had shown them that mastery over the environment was not about brute force, but understanding, patience, and subtlety. Night fell as they reached friendly lines. The team, battered but intact, reported their success. Commanders listened in awe as Logan detailed the operation, emphasizing the techniques, coordination, and discipline that had made victory possible. The mission would be remembered not for the firefight alone, but for the lessons in strategy and survival it had imparted. As the men rested, Logan looked toward the horizon, the jungle fading into darkness. The long high hills remained, silent and eternal, witnesses to the trials of those who dared to master them. Stone, now asleep, had learned more than he could have imagined, lessons that would endure long after the echoes of battle had faded. Logan knew that the jungle had changed them all, leaving marks invisible to the eye, but indelibly etched in memory and spirit. In the quiet of the night, Logan allowed himself a rare smile. The mission was complete, the team was intact, and knowledge had been earned at the cost of sweat, fear, and endurance. The long high hills had been conquered, not by sheer firepower, but by mastery, patience, and the relentless pursuit of understanding. A final lesson that would guide every step in the jungles yet to come.